All right, hello, this is Elizabeth back again for another just regular content video. And this time we are going to talk about props. So for anyone who's watching this that goes to my regular in-person class, you know that I normally have props with me, but we don't really use them because the gym does not offer props and I do not have enough money to buy props enough for everyone who comes to class. Something I used to do more often than I am currently is I would bring them and just say, hey, they're sitting here, limited amount. If anyone wants to use them, feel free. Eventually I stopped doing that. They weren't really getting used. And so I've more just made sure to cater the class and the practice around not using props and how to make it accessible if you don't have props. However, if you're at home, number one, you can use a ton of household items to act as props instead. For instance, you can use kitchen chairs, you can use cans, if you have like a plastic bin that's pretty small and easy to maneuver around, you can rest your hand on that. But if you do find yourself in a position where you can go ahead and buy props, I figured I would go ahead and do a video about what I purchased and kind of how I made those decisions and what I did. So the website that I primarily use for all of my props is everydayyoga.com. So I will link that below in the description of the video. Now, I have had many blocks in my yoga practice over the last 10 years, and what I have liked the most is my Cork block. So I have had foam blocks, and I think I have a set somewhere in my house, but what I found with the foam block is that if I'm putting more weight on it, like if I'm standing on it, or if I have my hand really pressing into it, it starts to get squishy, and it makes me feel less stable. You might disagree. You might like that squishiness, especially, you know, if you're doing a supported bridge where you plant this underneath like the small of your back and your tailbone, and then, you know, something softer feels a lot better. So you might find that you prefer that. However, I like that firmness. I like knowing that if I'm pressing into this, it is not going to give. So I picked, I think this is the largest size that they have for a Cork block on Everyday Yoga's website. And by the way, none of this is paid advertising. Like, I'm just talking about what I like, and then you can be like, hey, I like that too, or you can be like, not so much. But this is the block that I settled on. They do sell them individually, so I purchased two, so that way, you know, if I'm doing triangle pose, I can have one at the head of my mat, one at the back of my mat, and that way I don't have to move them as I'm doing my practice. And then also that way, if you haven't tried it before, I will make sure to include it in one of my future videos, is a downward facing dog where your hands are actually on the block. So the blocks are like both in front of you like this, and you have your hand on it. And when you go into your downward facing dog, it actually helps really focus on shifting those hips back. So I love using blocks for that reason in downward facing dog, and that's why I definitely want two. Once again, if you decide to go with foam, it's cheaper, so that makes it more accessible. But the Cork, I love it because it's nice and firm, and hard, and I can be confident that no matter how much weight I put on it, it's not going anywhere. So that's how I pick my Cork blocks. The next thing I want to talk about are straps. So my particular strap, I also got it from Everyday Yoga's website, but it is the Hugger Mugger brand. And the reason I went with that is I don't like the D-ring straps. I instead like this plastic one. I don't know what it's called, but I will link it below. I like this more because it's easier for me to kind of get it to release if I need it to release, or tighten when I need it to tighten. And so that's why I went with that one. And then again, kind of similar to how I talked about in my yoga mat video, if you've watched that, the longer the better. So I got the 10-foot strap. So right now this is halved, it's at 5 feet. That is, you know, perfect for some, but depending on what you're using it in, and like if, for example, you're making a loop with this and then wrapping it around beneath your thighs and around your back, you might want more space to where you can make it smaller for you and your body. So once again, better to have more and then make it less than have a small strap and wish that it was longer. So that's my strap. And also I do have a shorter strap as well that I use, and it's perfectly good. It's just when I went, that was like my first strap. When I wanted to buy a new one, I went with the long ones. So that was my choice. You choose whatever. And then finally, I want to talk about yoga blankets. So I actually think I got this from Amazon and not from Everyday Yoga, but they do have these on Everyday Yoga's website. I would recommend just find where you have the best deal. So for instance, if you find a great deal on these Mexican blankets on Amazon, get it from Amazon. If you want it from Everyday Yoga, do it there. If there's maybe a small business that you want to support and you know that they sell these blankets, do it that way. Do whatever works for you, because honestly, it doesn't matter as long as you like it. One thing I really like about the blankets is, number one, if you're doing a restorative class, or even if you're just in corpse pose at the end of class and you're kind of cold and you want to cover up, perfect. One thing I also like to do is if I fold it into this like kind of rectangular shape, I can put it in the center of my mat and have my knees on it. So then that way, if you watched my yoga mat video and I talked about how a thicker mat is better, or you can double up your mat to kind of cushion the knees, if you don't want to do any of those things, a blanket is perfect, and arguably cheaper than buying a super expensive, super thick mat. So keep that in mind, and it's completely up to you. A couple more things that I like to do with these is, for instance, the blanket, if I kind of have it in more of this flat or skinny rectangle where it's kind of in thirds, is this I can put under my hips. So while I'm sitting here, I can lift my hips, and then it raises my hips so that my knees sit lower than my hips. And that can feel very comfortable. It can prevent you from rounding. So if you find that you have really high knees when you're sitting on the ground, this will be better to support yourself. So that way you're not feeling like you're like struggling to stay upright. Same with the cork blocks. That's one reason too why I really like a cork block, is because if I decide to actually sit on it, I feel like that's an actual seat as compared to something that's squishy and might move around underneath me. So again, I will link all of this in my bio. This is not a paid advertisement. It's just me sharing what I like. And so that way it can hopefully help you pick what you like. That way you don't buy something and then go, oh man, why did I do that? So I've definitely made that mistake before, primarily with yoga mats as compared to yoga props. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to ask questions in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you guys again. Have a wonderful day. Bye.